All right, Republicans releasing brand new details about their tax reform 2.0 rollout, hoping to bring it to a vote before the midterms. So could this move the needle as much as Republicans want it to? Give them some steam. Joining me now is Independent Women's Forum senior policy analyst Patrice Lee Onwuka. Patrice, thanks so much for coming on this morning. The big thing about the first tax reform that was had a lot of criticism from the Democrats was that these tax cuts for regular people, were temporary and that there was a sunset clause. They ended in 2025. This bill aims to change that, right?
It does. So one of the first provisions is that it would extend the individual tax cuts and the small business tax cuts as well beyond the 2025 deadline or sunsetting. And that's great because large corporations were given certainty in making the corporate tax rates permanent. Right. Now, individual families and small businesses will have the same level of certainty. And I think that's fantastic when you want to start building emergency savings plans. I mean, the Federal Reserve found that 40% of American families don't even have $400 in emergency savings. Right. So this is going to go a long way to addressing that. Yeah.
And also for startup businesses, apparently they're going to be able to write off a little bit more of those startup costs. So you're going to give them a little bit more of a tax cut to kind of get them closer to what the corporations are benefiting as well. My question is, the big complaint from Democrats was the crumbs comment from Pelosi, but also the fact that there was that sunset clause for individuals. Now that this fixes that sunset clause, would there be any Democratic support for the tax reform 2.0?
Well, you would hope so. I mean, right now, it's going to be hard for them to keep up that line of attack that this was crumbs and that, they were disingenuous in saying that this was going to be an increase on middle class tax families when they were just looking at the future rather than current families, who, by the way, have actually benefited from these tax cuts. So it's going to be hard for them to defend that. Going into the midterms, it's going to be even harder for Democrats, particularly in states that President Trump won, to be able to say, hey, I'm going to vote against another tax cut that makes families better off in the long term. It's going to be hard to defend that.
House Ways and Means Committee releases some findings that they anticipate this will happen with this new tax plan if it goes through. They're saying it'll create 1.5 million new jobs. It'll bump the wages up by about a point and increase the GDP by about 2.2%. Those are probably very optimistic numbers. My question to you is, this will also, if you take this provision and take away the sunset clause on the individual tax rate, that's also going to add to the deficit, which we're now seeing is somewhere around $20 trillion, right? It'll cost money to do this.
Well, and that's the devil is going to be in the details. Not only the specific provisions of what's going to be added, particularly on the savings, which is exciting, but how is this going to be paid for? And I don't think we've seen any details yet on what exactly how this is going to be paid for. And I think that was one of the weaknesses of the original Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is it does add money to the debt, but the economic stimulus, which for this round two could be around 0.5%, even more, could erase some of the buildup that's going to be added to the debt. Hopefully,
that's the big gamble, and that's what the president's counting on: is that a bigger economy will just naturally pay more taxes, and that deficit will go down. Patrice, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rob.